Jim was dejected, to say the least. His marriage was over, his life was over, everything was over. How could she do this? Why did she do this? All that remains is how to salvage his existence from the smoking ruins. He left Morrison's restaurant, returned to the hotel, collected his things, but left her things. Let's see if she can remember where she left her things. You know, clothes, cosmetics, husband. He then left and checked out, heading home. House? Come on. More like a haunted house. And he was the new ghost. And this ghost was going to haunt somewhere else. Jim pulled up to his house and parked his Ford Explorer in the driveway next to his F-154 X4 pickup truck. He entered the house and was struck by the silence. Like in a tomb, he started crying. He sat down in the living room and began to cry. He thought about his children all the time. This only pulled him deeper into the well of despair. For the next hour, he wallowed in self-deprecation. Then his mind broke. He just broke down. He went to the bar, took a half-empty bottle of Chivas Regal, broke the top and drank about 6 ounces. He trembled a little and turned around, throwing the bottle into the fireplace, breaking the framed wedding photo of them above the fireplace. He screamed and immediately sobered up. "Enough of this," he said out loud. "I can't stand it anymore. Never." He headed to his office and turned on the computer, looking at the clock 22:24. Let's see how much pain I can cause her before I leave. Because he decided that was his only option. Revenge would be the exact same thing she did to him, their children and their families. He went to their bank, transferred all their savings and various accounts for vacations, household expenses, clothes, etc., into his checking account. Total, $17,638.38. Not exactly Warren Buffett, but they were middle class. He took $2,500, leaving the rest there, and transferred the amount to their savings account. He then closed other accounts except the savings and checking accounts. He then composed letters, one to his mother and one to her parents. After laying out the events of the night and him leaving, then orders to major news outlets and newspapers describing everything that happened. Dates, times, names, and places, what he was going to do and why. Passing off her treatment of him as retribution. He downloaded them and put everything into files to send as he saw fit. He then wrote a letter to Emma and one to Tommy to open on their 18th birthdays. He printed them out and sealed them in envelopes. He didn't want to be the bad guy and hoped that Linda would acknowledge the actual events that led to the separation. But if not, the children will eventually find out why their father left. He walked into the bedroom they once shared and pulled out a gym bag. Not a suitcase. He took underwear, socks, sneakers, hunting boots, 3 pairs of jeans, 3 flannel shirts, 6 t-shirts, and his shaving supplies. He then grabbed his fleece bomber jacket and parka and threw them on the bed. He undressed, went into the shower, and then dressed in clean clothes. He put on his scuffed steel-soled work boots, laced them up, and stood up. He took a deep breath. It's time to leave, he thought. He grabbed his NY baseball cap, Giants, his coat, bag, and left his room for the last time. Downstairs, he made coffee, and while he waited for the coffee maker to finish working, he picked up a yellow legal pad and wrote, "Linda, goodbye. Live without me, and let it be painful. Guess who?" He threw the note on the kitchen table and then threw his wedding ring on top. He then went into the office, opened the safe, took out his .357 Colt Python, clipped the holster to his belt, inserted the revolver into it, and took 2 boxes of ammunition, his passport, the extra cash he was saving for their vacation, and his marriage certificate. He returned to the kitchen, tore the marriage certificate into 4 pieces, took a kitchen knife and, pressing the pieces against the wall, plunged the knife into them. He went to the refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of ketchup, went back to the wall, and started decorating the license, the knife, and the entire wall in red. By this time, the coffee was ready. He took out a thermal mug, filled it, prepared the coffee the way he liked it, stirred it, and closed the lid. He placed the jug back on the hot stove, and then filled the reservoir with water. Thank goodness they had a cheap coffee maker that didn't turn off automatically. He opened the refrigerator and freezer doors, positioned a chair in front of the two doors, and unplugged the cord. He then took another knife and cut the cord from the wire. Satisfied that he had caused her some trouble, he gathered his things and headed to the garage. He opened the garage door. He then went to his gun safe. She never allowed a gun safe in the house. She said it was disgusting and dangerous. It didn't fit the decor anywhere. He opened it and took out his Winchester pumper, a Weatherby 30-06 rifle, and all his ammo. He locked the safe. Then a sleeping bag, a two-person tent, ground cloth, and fishing gear. He walked up to the F-150, opened the rear hatch, stowed everything inside, secured two 5-gallon jerry cans inside the bed, and closed it. Again, thoughts about his poor children and what would happen to them surfaced in his head. He groaned and leaned on the truck. Was this the right decision? Was it the right decision? He did not know. No matter what he did, he was a loser. This would haunt him for almost 4 years. A living hell, a torment that would eat away at his soul for the foreseeable future. But he felt that this was all he had, and that's what she gave him. He got into the car, threw the house keys on the garage floor, and didn't even bother locking anything. With all the lights on, he pulled out onto the street and drove away. He looked at his watch. His watch is a Storie du Volta, which Linda and the kids gave him for Father's Day last year. She showed him an advertisement that read, "For the man who gives everything and expects nothing in return." Ha, nonsense. But the hours were good. At least that's what he thought. He also thought they were expensive. Ha again. Turns out she bought them for $79 on sale. This is approximately the entire sum of his existence. Sorry. It was about 1:30 a.m. He went to the office of L.W. Stearns, an old family friend who considered Jim a second son and always said that he thought Jim and Linda were the real deal and they'd be together forever. He parked on the street and fell asleep, setting the alarm on his cell phone for 8 a.m. The melodious alarm clock rang 6 hours later. He stretched, yawned, and then drank the rest of his cool coffee and picked up his cell phone. He dialed LW's number and waited. He knew it was early, but he needed to move on, and he wanted to do it and get away before he got caught. If she or anyone else is even looking for him. The phone answered. "Hello?" said a strong voice on the other end. Even at 8 in the morning, the man was calm and collected. No sign of sleep or irritation, just LW. Rock in times of crisis. Well, that's what he needed now. "LW, I need your help right now. Can you come to the office? And can you bring a notary with you? I'll explain everything when I see you. Then we can talk. Please." "What are we talking about, son?" "Everything is fine. Is Linda okay?" "Not on the phone. If you cannot come, you will learn about everything from others by word of mouth." "You're welcome, LW." "For my sake, sir." "Okay, son, give me about an hour. Don't do anything stupid, at least until I get there. Did you hear?" "Thank you, sir." He ended the call. 50 minutes later, LW Stearns pulled up and got out of his Cadillac. He locked the car and saw Jim approaching with a stack of papers. After shaking hands, the two men turned and entered the 5-story building where LW's office was located. A short elevator ride to the top floor and then down the hall to LW's office of one of the leading lawyers in the region, and Jim's longtime friend. He was more than a father to him, as Jim's father died when Jim was 3 years old. LW offered his shoulder and was next to the boy, his best friend's son. They walked in and headed to LW's office. He turned on the coffee maker and sat down in his chair, motioning for Jim to sit across from him as he checked his voicemail. Then, "Okay, son, what are we talking about?" he asked. Jim spilled everything from the weekend to the LW's morning call. By the time he finished, he was furious but under control and not crying. Angry but not emotional. He thought about his children. He shuddered again. LW listened, taking notes occasionally but not interrupting. Finally, he sighed, pushed the yellow notebook aside and squeezed his temples, closing his eyes. "I'm too old for this," he thought, opening his eyes and looking sadly at the young man opposite. He paused, then sighed again, feeling the tightness in his chest, and leaned forward. "Son, you were taken by surprise and crushed. I don't know what to tell you, what to do, so you tell me. What do you want to do?" Jim stared at the older man. "I want to kill them both, slowly and deliberately. But I don't want to go to jail. They're not worth it. Although this would give me great pleasure, it would not help my sense of liberation, so I just want to leave. Not a divorce. I want to do what she did to me. I want to leave. Leave. Abandon her and the children, just as she abandoned her. Without hesitation. Just leave, girl. You know, like in the movie. That's what I want." He chuckled and felt a little peace for the first time since last night. Last night? He forgot that it was just yesterday. It seemed like it was such a long time ago. LW brought him back to reality. "What about the children? What about the children? Are they even mine? Should I take care of them when she doesn't? Am I supposed to worry about their well-being when she hasn't even remembered she has children, let alone a husband? All she thought about was herself. Well, I think about myself too, and myself says, to hell with her. Yes, I guess I should have shown compassion, but not now. Now, will you help me? What can I do? If I understand correctly, I can just walk away and forget about her. It's not illegal, right? This is what I want, what she did to me. I left her over $15,000 and didn't take anything else. Even my tools. She has her car. I canceled all utilities and cable TV. I canceled all my insurance. I want my 401k to go toward my kids' education when they turn 21. Let them earn it. Also my pension fund. What is there? Put it all in trust for them. Then I will give you power of attorney over me so that I don't have to deal with her. Never. Can we do it?" Again, the LW sighed and sat back in his chair. He stared at the man. He had truly never seen a person as completely destroyed as Jim. This frightened him like nothing else had done before. And he did 2 tours in Vietnam in the early 70s. He watched his wife of 50 years die from cervical cancer. It was worse than all of that combined. And just like the tragedy of his wife's death, there seemed to be nothing he could do about it. "Yes, we can do it. She may file for divorce because you left her, but she'll have to find you. Or she may publish in the local newspapers that you abandoned her and the children. Wait 2 years and it will become legal. Your children will never see you. They will suffer from this, and your mother will be devastated. Is this what you want, Jim? What about a consultation? Do you think this will help?" Jim's look said it all and almost ripped the LW's heart out. "Why? So that she can cry and beg me to forget it. For her to say the old song, 'It was only sex, dear. It didn't mean anything, honey. We can get through this if you love me.' No, I'm not going to put up with this. She did it. Let her deal with the consequences. Consequences, LW, consequences. The same way I had to deal with it. He won alone." He thought about it. "Is this really what I want? Are you kidding? What I really want is for this whole damn mess to be a dream. Damn dream. Fucking nightmare. But that will never happen. And I'm not going to sit in some godforsaken 10 by 10 room with this bitch and some new age psychologist telling me to forget about it. I should forgive her. It was a mistake. It was only sex. She's for real loves me. Think about the children. We can survive this. We can survive this. Blah, blah, blah. But you know what's even worse? After all the laws, lawyers, legal bullshit, crap about what she did and what happened, can't we get over this? What about the kids? I'll take every last penny from you. You'll be ashamed after all this bullshit and everything else that I can't even think about. You know what?" LW just shook his head. "No. After all this is wrong. She is wrong. I hurt, and no one can or will do anything about it." After crying, I finally broke down. "I want my life back." I lingered for a moment. "But that will never happen, right?" "No, that won't happen. So if my life is over, so is theirs." LW thought for a moment and didn't see any way to get Jim to change his mind. He tried to stop the few tears that were starting to form, unsuccessfully. Jim sucked in a deep breath and cleared his throat. LW stood up straight and picked up a pencil. At this time, Penny Wilson, his personal assistant and chief notary, walked in and saw two men sitting in a very tense and emotional conversation. She hesitated, but LW beckoned her to come in. He introduced Jim to her and said that they would need to have some documents certified. She nodded and went to get her tablet and coffee. We sat down and Penny was brought up to speed. She looked like she wasn't judging, but you could sense that she didn't have a lot of good feelings for my soon-to-be ex-wife. I already thought of her as not my wife only in name. We drafted the separation agreement and power of attorney for LW and signed and notarized all documents. Trusts were set up, with my mother and LW as trust administrators. I handed the LW the letters to the kids and stood up, shaking hands with everyone around me with sadness and a somber, "Too sorry" from Penny. Why did I feel so little sorrow? My life was ending just a day after its actual end. I left, and the day didn't seem so gloomy. Still cloudy and sad, but not catastrophically terrible. I can't understand why. I went to the bank and withdrew money from the savings account and closed it, leaving the principal amount in the checking account. I went to my truck, started it, and drove to the gas station. I filled the tank, the extra tank on the short bed, and 2 5-gallon jerry cans. Then I went to a small internet cafe. I ordered a coffee and a muffin, then fired up my laptop and went online. I uploaded files to everyone on the list: her parents, my mom, then those on television, and then 2 local newspapers. I then went to the Sharks office and the NFL Players Association and canceled all of our credit cards and reported them stolen. I finished my coffee and stood up to leave. The weather began to clear up. March around Cicero sucks, to say the least. It's cold, gloomy, and dark as spring tries to clear the air and take over as much as possible in the area. Sounds like my outlook on life. It was a little after 2:00 p.m. when I headed east, not knowing where. I drove for about 7 hours, stopped at a nondescript motel, and got a room. I woke up early again because I really couldn't sleep and drove about 6 more hours, ending up in Maryland on the Patuxent River. In the small town of Golden Beach, definitely feels like a summer town, but at the beginning of March there is not much to do here. I parked in front of a small restaurant called Sally's and went inside. I had to change direction soon because the road was ending. On the other side of the river was the west bank of the bay, then the east bank, and soon after that the Delaware. After that, my truck and I would have to learn to float. Sorry, humor. This is the Atlantic Ocean. So I grabbed my Road Atlas old school, and went inside. I looked around and noticed that just before lunch, it wasn't particularly crowded. On the wall at the entrance hung a large notice board, old-style, brown cork. The usual set of small-town advertisements: workers needed, babysitting available, dog walking, car sales, and one for rent ad. For rent, a small studio apartment. 1 bedroom, living room, kitchenette, shower, quiet area, alcohol consumption and smoking are prohibited. $135 per month, paid in advance in cash. Internet, utilities included. 1 parking space included. Call. Recommendations are welcome. I grabbed the ad and looked around the interior again. Only 4 or so people, only 1 sat at the end of the counter. I walked over and sat down. An older black woman in a waitress uniform walked up and smiled at me. Her badge said, "Sally." Well, well. "Hello, dear. What can I bring you?" "What can you tell us about this ad?" I asked. She didn't even look at the ad, didn't take her eyes off my face, didn't stop smiling. She studied me, assessing what she saw. Finally, she spoke. Straight to the point. "Huh? Looking for a room? For a short time? What about work? Do you need a job too?" Yes, and yes, I guess." Still in assessment mode, she nodded, took her cell phone out of her pocket, dialed a number, put it to her ear, and waited. 2 rings, and then, "Hey, May, I have an interesting candidate here that you might want to talk to." "Yes, it looks decent, respectable. Perhaps it will do." "Okay, honey, see you in a while." She disconnected and put the phone back in her pocket. "Sometimes they're more trouble than they're worth," she said, pointing to her Verizon cell phone. Then she smiled at me. "Are you hungry? It's just about time for a late lunch." I think yes. Maybe a roast beef sandwich and salad with ranch dressing. And sweet tea. How about this? It will be now, dear. She smiled with all her appearance. She turned and went to prepare my lunch. I wondered how this would all work out. Late lunch arrived, and it was great. It also came with a sweet coleslaw, which was a nice bonus. I was finishing my second glass of sweet tea, almost finished my sandwich and salad, and was taking my time with the coleslaw when the screen doors swung open and my future life entered. The woman was of Oriental appearance, perhaps 45 years old, 5'2" and tall, thin, and very athletic. The man looked 67 years old, but he didn't look old. He is 6'3" and about 220 pounds, slim, sculpted, with a rugged appearance. He could be a Marine Corps recruiting poster, and he was focused. He was wearing aviator sunglasses, a hideaway Marina t-shirt and jeans, and headed straight for the counter. He walked the woman to a seat to my left, walked around and sat down to my right, took off his glasses, pulled his cap back, and stared at me with his deep, brown eyes. "Please take a seat," I said somewhat sarcastically, moving my gaze between the two people. There were now 6 empty seats at the counter, all unoccupied, and there were 12 middle tables, 2 of which were occupied and served by 1 waitress. Sally controlled the rack, so apparently these 2 were my interviewers. I held the man's gaze, but that didn't bother him. Then the woman spoke. "Well, hello. I'm May Lowell. This is my husband, Joshua Lowell. Say hello, Joshua." He muttered and did not take his eyes off. He studied me, analyzed me. His wife continued talking, so I turned my attention to her. She extended her hand to me. I responded in kind. We shook hands, and she continued. "What is your name? Where are you from? And why are you here?" Taking a deep breath, I slowly took out my wallet, took out my driver's license, and introduced myself. I gave them a brief summary of my story without going into significant detail. Mrs. Puss Lowell insisted. "So are you married?" Somewhat reluctantly, "Yes, ma'am." "And you have children?" I hesitated again. "Yes, ma'am." "Where are they?" I got excited. "Don't know, not interested." "Look, I didn't do anything wrong, nothing illegal. It may be morally reprehensible, but I don't care. You have my driver's license, and I assume you have friends in law enforcement who can check me out. But if that's the case, I'm leaving. I do not need it. I'm a man of my word. Maybe not honor, no more, but I survived it. Too much, actually." May started again. "Listen, Jim, I just want." The voice behind me sounded like the voice of God. "That's enough, May." I turned around and looked at her husband. The face hasn't changed, but the eyes have. Eyes. He no longer looked through me. He was looking at me. She stopped talking, looking at me as I saw something click in her head. Then Joshua started, and I turned to pay attention to him. "Rent is $150 per month, cash, monthly, for the next month. This is clean, the last available apartment on our territory. The rent has gone up because spring is coming, and it will be in demand. I am also a man of my word, and a man of honor. If I say it's $150 a month, that's what it is. From now on until we part ways. If you're interested, follow us to the house, look around, and we'll shake hands." Now it's my turn. My eyebrows shot up. "Shall we shake hands?" I spat it out. "Like I said, a man of his word," he said. I thought for a moment, then nodded my head. "Okay, let's go." I waved for the bill, and Sally placed a piece of paper on the counter. I was a little taken aback. $5.12. You know, tax, she smiled. "All?" I asked. Her smile turned into a wide grimace. "Yes, all." I looked at her, took out my wallet again, and threw a 10 and a $1 bill on the counter. $11. She smiled across the street. "Big tip. Thank you." She nodded to the Lowells and picked up the money. We left, and Joshua nodded in greeting to 2 sheriff's deputies who had stopped by for coffee and headed to his truck. Joshua nodded toward a bright black 4-door Rubicon Sahara with big tires and a winch. "Follow us," he said, walking around the car to the driver's door, helping Mai climb onto the running board and into the car. He closed the door, but not before saying something to his wife, smiling and kissing her. It's the first time I've seen him smile, I thought. His expression turned grim again as he walked around to the driver's door, all the while looking at me. He climbed inside, started the car, and drove away. I hurriedly started the truck, backed out, and followed them. This was not difficult, since the rear window of the Jeep had a large decal with the symbols of the Marine Corps, an American flag on the left, and a Vietnamese flag on the right, from the 1970s circus. There was glory behind the driver, another behind the passenger. Nothing else. He drove for about 12 minutes, turned towards the river, and turned right into a secluded driveway, leading to an enclave of 10 bungalows on stilts, 5 on each side of a 2-lane paved road that ended at the marina parking lot. Marina Hideaway. About 36 berths, a long concrete pier with 4 gas stations with a floating extension. A long 1-story building with a veranda overlooking the river, and to the right of them are barns and a descent with access to water. They drove to the last cottage on the right, a blue house with white shutters standing on stilts. It stood behind the last of the barns and a little closer to the river. They stopped, and I parked in the designated spot. I walked out and approached an elderly couple who were watching me approach. I, however, was focused on the cottage. 8 feet off the ground, a staircase led to a small veranda. There was also a ramp that ran along the back side, going up about 4 feet, and then turning back to go up to the veranda. The Lowells went up the stairs and onto the veranda, and I walked up the ramp. Well constructed, anchored in concrete, with anti-slip coverings on the deck. I went up and met them at the top. They opened the door and invited me inside. Inside there was a small hallway opening onto the kitchen on one side and a small bathroom with shower opposite in the hallway. It ended with a bedroom on the left, overlooking the river and buildings, and a living room on the right, overlooking distant hills and low forest. All the exterior windows were of the shutter type, opening onto a veranda that ran around the building. There were ceiling fans in the bedroom and living room, and a small, freestanding wood-burning fireplace in the living room. There were no other heating or cooling devices. The ceilings were low, and everything seemed well insulated. Cozy, cute, perfect for a romantic weekend. The total area may have been 200 square feet. Don't think about it, buddy. Not so anymore. Jim shuddered and turned to the Lowells. I will take him. Not so fast. How are you going to pay for it? Do you have a job? Not yet, sir. What are you offering? Joshua appreciated again. He then looked at Mai, then back to Jim. Maybe, what can you do? I am a licensed aircraft mechanic. I am also quite good at working with wood and driving a forklift. Joshua increased his assessment of the young man by about 1.5 points. Okay, how about minimum wage in cash, unofficially? Working at Hideaway Marina. We have a couple of branded t-shirts and wear them with jeans. There are also several local churches and charities that may need help from time to time. You will cooperate with them individually in cash. Don't take advantage of their kindness. If you do this, we will find out and you will be on the street. Understood? Jim smiled. Loud and clear, boss. Joshua nodded and said, tomorrow morning, bright and early. So 6 is it? In a restaurant, in a long building. Come half an hour early and you can buy breakfast. Let's see what you can do. He extended his hand. Agreed? Agreed, Jim said and shook the man's hand. Thus began their adventure. Over time, he heard their story and they eventually recognized him. Joshua was a Marine scout in Vietnam, where he rescued Mai and her family. They were eventually transported to the Philippines, then through Catholic charities to the United States. Throughout all of this, Corporal Joshua Lowell, who was fascinated by this young woman, kept an eye on her. He returned to the United States and found her in Oceanside, California. There he met her and proposed. He converted to Catholicism, which suited her family, but not so much his own. Then, after the wedding and a short honeymoon, the new staff sergeant and his wife went to Paris Island, which went against her family's wishes. He had 2 overseas deployments, one during Operation Desert Storm and another he can't talk about. He achieved the rank of Infantry Sergeant Major and retired with many awards and honors. Along the way, they had 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. All 4 enlisted in the military, 3 in the Marines, and 1 the black sheep in the Air Force Academy. Third son. The daughter also served in the Marine Corps, graduated from the Naval Academy, and joined the Marine Corps Legal Service. After 7 years, she resigned, received the rank of lieutenant, opened her own law office, and began a serious relationship with a young pediatrician from Baltimore. I continued my business. I have hardened myself, physically and mentally. The weather was much nicer than in northern Illinois, and I began to enjoy it. I became more skilled with woodworking, and being mechanically savvy and holding an aircraft maintenance license, I soon became popular around town and with my new boss. Eventually, I was officially hired, got promoted, and forgot about everything, well, almost everything. I also started a small business, hiring 2 young guys, one an ex-convict and the other a recently discharged veteran. We renovated and built home additions and began to gain a reputation locally. The 3 youngest children often spent time at the Lowells, but all 4 met with me, and I gradually became accepted. 2.5 years after my arrival, I am well settled. I impressed Joshua with my ability and work ethic. I was now making almost $20 an hour and was a valuable employee and a semi-official family member. But it was telling my story to my benefactors that seemed to help my cause. I was shocked by what she found out. How could a woman do such a thing? What's wrong with her? And she has children. Oh, sorry, Jim, I forgot. But this means that you also have children. And I have 2 people that I care about, that I have raised, and that I have loved their entire lives. But children, I'm not sure if they are my biological children. That would mean I had to believe the traitor. So tell me. Sorry, I haven't gotten over it yet. Joshua was watching me the whole time. He said little, but observed a lot. Still, young man, you are broken. I'm not judging your choice of path because, frankly, you're at a dead end anyway. Joshua, yes, darling. I'm sorry. The point is that you chose the path and followed it. There seemed to be no other way. I don't judge your choice. But you're broken. I already said this. But you don't do anything to fix yourself. Oh, I was accepted into their family during the 3 years I lived here. Everyone had opinions about my actions, but they understood why I did it. But they were right. I was broken. I had no social life other than hanging out with the Lowells and a few people from the churches that I allowed to get close to me. I was a recluse, but I had Linda to thank for that. Linda, a selfish, narcissistic bitch who ruthlessly dumped her husband for a night of passion with a narcissistic jerk. Why? Because she could. She deserved it. A woman who thought nothing of me, putting her own satisfaction before her family, children, and loving husband. Why? Because she could, because she wanted it, because she was supposed to do it. Why? Who the hell knows? I certainly don't. I started thinking deeply about everything. I struggled with the decision to leave, looking at it from every conceivable angle and perspective. I was no closer to solving my problem than I was that night. But I moved away from the nightmare, beginning to bury the hatred and disgust I felt that night. I like to think that I am healing. And here I am, 3 years later, in a prison of my own making, held here by a damn traitor who kept me here by her actions and my inaction. I almost forgot about worrying that someone would find me. I would almost welcome it, I think. But all that is about to change. Because I'm a good guy. I was in town on Sunday morning, just after church, leaving a small grocery store. I never had to carry a python anymore because I never cared about getting a carry permit. But the weapon, along with 2 long guns, was registered in Maryland. I bought a standard police asp folding baton-shaped rod. I wore it when I was outside for safety and protection. Anyway, I was walking towards the truck and came across 2 guys who seemed to be trying to take the keys, purse, and any other valuables from a young lady who was trying to get into her late-model Toyota Supra. She screamed and struggled, but due to the location and time of day, this did not attract attention. Jim intervened, sticking his nose into other people's business. I placed 2 bags of groceries on the hood of my truck, rushed across the parking lot to the scene of the attack, pulled out the asp, and opened it. Approaching them, I shouted, attracting their attention. They turned around, and that's when I saw the gun. But I was already caught up in the action. I struck the outlaw's wrist with the whip as he raised his weapon, and heard a sickening crack as the bones in his wrist broke. I continued through him into the other bad guy and pinned him to the hood of the Supra, while his wounded comrade landed on top. The subsequent pop of exhaled air left them both breathless. But the screams of the first one, coupled with the groans of the second one over broken ribs as they slid to the ground, were more than enough compensation for me. Holding my breath as the adrenaline wore off, I turned to come face to face with the tiny woman. She was short, about 5'3", but slim. Sweet, but not stunningly beautiful like Linda. Small breasts, but beautiful slender legs, and an excellent figure. Long brown hair tied in a ponytail. Librarian-style glasses with black frames. But the key point was that she was screaming at the back window of the car, trying to open the door. I dialed the number on my mobile phone and received an answer. "Hey Jim, what happened? Michael Lowell, number 2 son of the Lowells. Mike, I have a situation here at the grocery store. Possible robbery, assault, attempted robbery, and at that moment I realized that there was a child in the back seat of the car. Kidnapping. Don't go, we're on our way." He ended the call, and I turned around to make sure the villains remained where they were. I picked up the gun, told them to turn their stomachs on the ground and lie still like on TV, and walked away to the young woman. She was still trying to open the back door, so I carefully moved her aside and opened the door. It was easy. She seemed to be a little panicked. She reached into the car and pulled out a small girl, perhaps 4 or 5 years old. "Are you okay?" I asked. She cried, but gradually came to her senses. She slowly wiped away her tears, sobbed, and looked at me. She smiled and said, "Thank you, thanks a lot. They wanted to take my car and my child." "That won't happen," I said with a smile. She smiled even wider, sobbed again, and asked, "Are you a policeman?" For some reason, I found my long-lost sense of humor. I smiled. In fact, I laughed for the first time in a long time. "No," I said, "but I play a cop on TV," opening my face in a cheerful smile. She, on the other hand, looked at me as if she would rather take her chances with the villains. It was at that moment that cars with flashing lights and sirens arrived, and Mike and his partner arrived. They jumped out of the car, weapons in their hands. I raised my hands, holding the gun by the barrel. Mike took the weapon and put it in evidence. "What happened, Jim?" I gave him a quick rundown, then sheepishly apologized to the young woman and Mike for my lame joke. Then my world turned upside down again. I introduced myself. "Sorry for my frivolous comment. I tried to be nice. My name is Jim Carlisle. I hope I haven't offended or scared you. Are you and the baby okay?" She looked at me, trying to decide if I was being honest. There were 4 police officers and an ambulance had just arrived. The 2 suspects were handcuffed and receiving medical attention while a paramedic cared for her and the little girl. Finally, the paramedic said that they were simply in shock, but they needed to monitor their condition. The woman looked between Mike and me. Finally, she looked at Mike and asked, "Do you know this guy, Mike?" He smiled. "Yes, I know him. He works for my father and lives in a complex near the marina. He is a good guy." She turned to me. "Thanks again. My name is Emma Lindell." "What the heck?" I stared at the woman, but all I could see was my sweet daughter's face. What else could happen? Hee. Wait for this moment. Mike, apparently, did not yet understand the similarity of the names. He turned to Emma and said, "Is Linda okay?" I staggered and ran into her car. She screamed and pulled back. Mike supported me. I was a grown man, and I was completely caught off guard. I shook my head and looked around. The world slowly came back into focus. "Linda, no, please, God, no." Then it dawned on Mike what had happened. He shook me and hit me in the face. "Pull yourself together, Jim. These are not your girls." Then he realized that Emma didn't understand what was happening. He turned to her, supporting me, and quickly apologized. Jim had very bad experiences in the past. His ex-wife's name was Linda, and his young daughter's name was Emma. But that's all I feel comfortable saying. He is a good man. I trust him with the life of my family and will support him no matter what. Wow, I didn't know I was so highly regarded. I thought they were just tolerating me. I straightened up and felt better, but very embarrassed. Stuttering and mumbling, I began to apologize. I apparently had difficulty speaking, and I probably made an even bigger fool of myself by trying to leave. Emma stopped me. Jim, Mr. Carlyle, everything is fine. Really, just take a deep breath and relax. I started to calm down and Mike moved away from me. One of the other police officers came over and said that he needed to get our statements and personal information. So we worked it out while little Linda looked at me like I had two heads, and probably none of them were human. Finally, Emma turned to me and asked if I wanted to have lunch. "Have you ever been to Sally's?" she suggested. Mike watched my reaction, and when I blushed and said that Sally's was one of my favorite places, he started grinning from ear to ear. I looked at him, frowned, and he started giggling. "Go have lunch, Jim, and don't rush. See you later." He left, barely smiling. What was it? I turned to Emma and saw that she was studying me. She tilted her head and asked, "Well, what do you say to that? I'm a little hungry. My daughter is probably starving too. And since you're a man, you're probably hungry too. Let's go, I'll treat you. It's the least I can do to thank you." I haven't felt this way in over 3 years. Not since that night. I mean, I actually felt human again. I was a little taken aback by how suddenly it happened. But I thought, what the hell? I was so down that this feeling seemed completely foreign to me. So we went to eat. We walked about 300 yards to Sally's since the town wasn't that big after I put the groceries in the back of my truck and locked the lid. We arrived at Sally's and walked in. It was cool inside, but I felt hot. I wonder why. Sally saw us, waved, and then pointed to an empty table. We soon approached the wonderful hostess who usually tended the counter and saved tables for her girls. But we were the exception. Sally beamed with pleasure. "Are you two going to ask for a hero discount?" I was puzzled, but Emma giggled. "News travels fast, huh, Sally?" she said. Sally continued the conversation. Mike spoke on the radio about the detention. "Looks like Mr. Nice Guy is already well known around here. Well done, Jim. I knew you were a good guy the first time I saw you, honey." She was having too much fun at my expense. The small-town vibe seems to extend further than just the environment. This was confirmed by 2 elderly gentlemen who came in and, seeing us at the table, approached. "How are you, Sal? Is the pie fresh?" asked the first one. "I just took 2 apple ones and 1 peach one out of the oven, Rufus. Choose." He laughed, took off his Vietnam veteran cap, and extended his hand. "Well done, young man. It's good to see that the younger generation is not afraid to join the fight. I heard he had a gun." I was amazed when I shook his hand and felt a warm handshake. The second person chimed in. "I always said that Joshua has a good sense of a person's character." He replaced Rufus' hand, also shaking my hand. They nodded to my companions, smiling briefly, and headed towards the counter. Sally was delighted with the attention and couldn't stop smiling. "Well, it looks like you two are going to be the hot topic in town for a while, and that means my establishment will be home to our latest hero in town." Emma laughed too. "Can we get dinner, Sally, before his head gets too bloated?" I was beyond embarrassed and apologized to Sally and Emma. Sally suggested grilled chicken, fries, and spinach with a side salad. It was a Tuesday lunch special, even though it was after 2:30 p.m., but she was the chef, and if we wanted it, there was no problem. I nodded, and Emma said it suited her. "And mac and cheese and nuggets for Linda, please." It was the first time I saw the child smile, but then she returned to a neutral expression, again directed at me. This didn't seem to bother Emma. Sally left to order and Emma returned to questioning me. It turns out that Angelina, Mike's sister, Camille, Mike's wife, and you remember right, were secretly trying to arrange for us to meet. They thought it would have a good effect on my recovery. Credit to Emma is that she only cared about her child and was not interested in a romantic relationship. Fate intervened, and here we are. So, Mr. De Chihiro, she grinned, I know a little about you, and you know almost nothing about me. So let's start with me. I am 29 years old. I have been divorced for 3 years, but it was more of a formality since my abusive husband was in prison. He died last year. I was one of Mike's sister's first cases after she opened her private practice. She spoke more quietly when she mentioned her ex-husband, I assume because her daughter was sitting nearby. I am an accountant licensed in estate planning and certified in investments. I have a company, actually it's just my best friend and I, and a notary secretary. We are doing well. We have been working together for more than 3 years. So I was a little surprised when these two thugs tried to rob us or kidnap us or steal a car or whatever they were up to. Around this time, she started to get emotional and started crying. I guess the adrenaline had finally worn off, and she was starting to realize what had almost happened. I stood up and walked around her chair, crouched down and hugged her. It was nice. She sobbed, and little Linda began to cry too. So I reached out and pulled her into my arms too. We knelt for a minute, and a wave of feelings rushed through me. For the first time in over 3 years, I felt normal, fine, whole again. It scared me because I never thought I would feel that way again. I looked at the sweet woman in my arms and at the little minx sobbing in our embrace. I didn't want it to end. At that moment, I looked into Sally's face. A very concerned black woman looked at us with a serious expression on her face. For the first time in 3 years, I did not see a smile on her face. She set the iced tea and apple juice on the table as I began to mumble an explanation, but Emma interrupted me with a muffled sob about how it was an emotional outburst due to the events of that day. Sally relented as I stood up and returned to my seat, but I moved him a little closer to the two ladies sitting with me. Her smile returned, and as she walked away, she winked at me. I straightened my shirt, grabbed my iced tea, took a long sip, and then looked up at Emma. Okay, it's my turn. First, I apologized for my sudden attack at the moment of meeting. I explained that when she introduced herself and named her daughter, I was taken by surprise that their names were the same as my wife and daughter's names, only in reverse order. It took me by surprise, and I wasn't prepared for it. Sorry again, I said. I began to tell my rather sad and emotional story, not going into the grosser aspects, but making it clear what happened. I didn't hide anything, but I didn't focus on the cruel details either. She realized that Linda had been cheating on me, dumped me, and ignored me in the worst possible way. I told her I was not proud of what I had done, but I saw no other way out of the disaster. Could I have done anything differently? Certainly. I've thought about this hundreds of times over the past 3 years. Would anything change? For whom? I gave her everything she gave me. When I told her everything, it was as if the fog in my mind was clearing. The burden seemed to be lifted, if you will. I know it sounds corny, but that's exactly how it felt. How they write about it. This woman was a completely neutral party who had no dog in this fight. At least that's what I thought. But as I told my story of heartbreak, Emma's eyes widened and then hardened. She listened carefully and her brain worked. I subsequently realized that she does this in her professional career and personal life. Her personal life revolved around her daughter and everything that included it, and much of her professional life revolved around her Linda. As we moved forward, I became involved. But that was ahead. She listened intently as I told her what I had done and how devastated I was by what had happened. How I signed all the documents, took less than half of our funds, how I gave all my additional funds for the future education of my children, how I simply left her, how she left me. I know I was repeating myself, and I could tell she was a little worried that I was starting to lose control. I stopped and looked into her eyes. It seemed to me that there was something soft and caring about them. I took a quick glance at Linda and was startled by her statement. She looked straight at me and said, "I'm not bad, Linda, like her." The child's innocent look and calm demeanor, along with the way she looked at me while drinking her apple juice, was amazing. I thought about my Emma and what she would say or do in this situation. I looked back at her mother and caught a smile before she hid her expression. "Mr. Pensa Carlyle, I'm sorry for what I thought. I didn't realize how much it affected you. But you need to get better. You need to recover. And only you can do this. Trust me, I know. As they say, I was in such a situation, I went through it. So I guess we could see each other again someday." Dinner arrived, and we dug into our meal with gusto, chatting a bit about life here in Golden Beach. She had lived here since she moved out of her apartment after her husband's arrest, a little over 4 years. Baby Linda was just over 5 years old. We finished dinner and she drank her iced tea, looked at me and said, "Well, I hope to see you again, Mr. Pensa Carlyle. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart." She collected her things, her mobile phone, her purse, her car keys. Why do women throw their things around when they sit down to eat or talk? Don't know. Anyway, she stood up and beckoned to Linda. She held out her hand for me to shake, but the touch was more than just a handshake, and it lasted a little longer than necessary. She smiled, and they walked out the door. I remained standing, then sat down again, realizing she left me the bill. "This is Minx," I smiled. Sally came over and handed me the bill. She smiled and said, "Don't ruin it, honey. She's a real find and worth the wait." I paid and went home feeling, I don't even know what, except that I felt better than I had in a long time. But I had a clear feeling that I was satisfied. The weeks turned into months, and I ran into Emma several times, even managing to invite her and Linda out for ice cream a couple of times. I was becoming human. The next morning, I showed up as usual for breakfast at the Marina restaurant, and then we launched 2 small boats and serviced them for their owners, who were due to arrive on Friday evening. The week continued, and on Thursday, I was informed that there would be a barbecue at the Lowell's house on Friday. My presence was welcome. Looks like I'll be having a barbecue on Friday. It's good that it's not Lent, so I decided that I would take a nap on Saturday after I had a lot to drink on Friday. Sounds good, doesn't it? On Friday, I got up and went to breakfast. I was completely unaware of everything that was happening around me, but the situation developed, and my decision was formed without my knowledge. The families who owned the boats arrived to claim their vessels, and I took it upon myself to show them what we had done, explain what to look for, our hours of operation, especially the fuel station, and the like. These were weekend regulars, but not locals. Once I had everything settled and working on a couple of mechanical projects, 4 p.m. came, and I left work. I was now working full-time, cleaned myself up, and went home to change. A clean t-shirt and clean jeans after all. It was a BBQ, and I was almost like family, and I was off. I arrived at the Lowell home, a spacious log home-style ranch of about 5,000 square feet, FT. The house had a wraparound deck, a patio in the back, and a jacuzzi next to the pool. The fire pit and barbecue were already smoking, and there were quite a few people there already. Mai greeted me, and after a quick hug and kiss on the cheek, she threw me into the commotion. A typical family gathering, children and spouses mingled, but almost immediately I was singled out by May Angelina, their daughter, their youngest child. She was a very prominent attorney in the area and served in the Marine Corps. She was very close to the young doctor, and everyone hoped that this was serious. Let's see. But here she is, alone and focused on me. "Jim, how are you doing? I've only met you 2 or 3 times in the last 3 years, but what I saw made a very good impression, and what I learned is also good. A little sad and disturbing, but nothing that would change my mind. And a certain person is very seriously interested in you. Can we talk?" "Okay, I have nothing. I had just been taken aback by a young woman whom I knew casually, but I had always only had good impressions of her. And what were these other things she was talking about? What did she learn? When? How? Why? And a certain person who, and what does she mean? Can we talk? Yes, of course, and we will do it. Yes, please, right away, if you don't mind. I have more questions than answers. Can we? I asked. She smiled and took my hand. We were joined by Mike and his wife Camille. They smiled, probably seeing my obvious embarrassment and anxiety. They led me to a small table under a huge shady tree. We sat down and I received hugs and handshakes, as well as a bottle of Budweiser for Mike and white wine for the ladies. Why do women always choose wine? Mike smiled at me. Budweiser. I think you'll need this, but not too much, okay? I took a long sip and May Angelina began. Okay, let me lay it out as it is. I was assigned a mission about a year and a half ago. Well, she's a Marine. I was pretty sure I knew who was behind this. I turned around, looking for Joshua. There he was, talking to several people, Emma, and throwing a sideways, neutral glance in my direction. Cold, without recognition, and returned to the conversation again. Yes, I knew. Listen carefully, soldier. So, she really enjoyed it. Well, she's a Marine. As I said, I was tasked with finding out your situation. I have been in touch on your behalf with your lawyer, Elvive Stearns. Don't worry, no one knows where you are or what's wrong with you. But suffice it to say that we now know much more about things than before. LV. Witty. He didn't reveal anything you hadn't already told us, and he confirmed everything you told us. Then he asked what was on my mind. He never asked where you were, how you were, if you were thinking about coming back or anything like that. So I asked him what the situation was back in Cicero, Illinois. That's what I found out. I'm the only one who knows about this. Even my parents don't know yet. Just then Robert, her young friend, came up and looked at her with a smile. He kissed the top of her head. Everything is fine, dear? Yes, but I'm just starting my report. Come back in a while, dear, please, she said, smiling back. He smiled back and cheerfully said, okay, let me know, and left to join the little party. May Angelina looked after him and shook her head. I really want to let him in on all of this, but he's not family yet. Perhaps soon. She shook her head again and turned to me. So, like I said, I'm the only one who knows all this. I'll tell you everything here if you don't mind, because we're all family here, and whether you like it or not, you do too. So are you ready? My insides were fighting to come out, and I was having a hard time taking a deep breath. Mike stood up and told me to drink while he finished his beer and went to get another. He returned with 2 Budweisers and a bottle of iced tea. I think you've had enough alcohol, but you need to stay hydrated for that. And I haven't even heard the story yet. He grinned and sat down. I turned to Angie, as she was known in the family. I need to know. I mean, how bad can it be? I'm not in prison. Yet. So let's find out. She continued to smile that smile. Yes, she really enjoyed it. It seems that after she returned home, she had a plan to make you go through your hysterical fit and let you get her back. She was not herself. Then she entered the house. She panicked and became confused. She thought you committed suicide or were killed. She dialed 911 and gave a somewhat coherent account of what happened and what she found. She kept screaming, "The smell, the smell." They were told that an outfit was on the way to get her out of the house and stay in touch. But she had already hung up and called her parents. The police arrived, spoke to her, and called for backup. She continued to scream about the blood and the smell. She was placed in a police car, and when the second car and shift sergeant arrived, one officer stayed with her to wait for the ambulance while 3 other officers went inside. About 20 minutes passed before they returned outside, removing their latex clothing while one of them closed the door and covered it with police tape. The sergeant and another officer approached her and said one word. I have received information from a reliable source that there was disgust and irritation on their faces. By this point, she was completely delighted and could barely contain herself. She laughed and straightened up. Jim knew what would happen next and smiled. Ketchup. The police were puzzled and a little annoyed. They wanted to know what was going on. Around this time, her parents arrived and the circus really started to heat up. Your emails and messages have already been circulated everywhere, and they've been busy answering calls from friends, family, and colleagues. You have created a real farce, so bad that she couldn't fix it even if she wanted to. That's when the news cars started arriving. Angie smiled as she looked at me. Well done, Jim. Mike and Camille looked at me as if they were seeing me for the first time. Camilla's mouth was open, and Mike could only squeeze out, "Wow." Angie cleared her throat and continued. So after the cops read her the act about false police reports and wasting their time, they left. News services are not easily left behind. Mom and Dad dragged her into the house and immediately opened all the windows to ventilate the place. They then reprimanded her for the mess that someone had caused. They eventually got the whole story out of her. Needless to say, her mother was shocked and her father was furious at both of you. At her for her wanton actions, at you for running away. Social media buzz, press coverage, and among friends and family. But this was just the beginning. LV received a call and, as per the plan, had no idea where you were. Things got worse and worse. Her father eventually almost lost patience with her, and when they couldn't find you, told her to file for divorce. She was devastated. She delayed this for months while she spent the money you left her. It took almost 2 years for the divorce to become final. That's right, you've been free for almost 6 months. She was drowning in debt on the house and was forced to sell it to avoid mortgage bankruptcy. She lost her job for various reasons and began drinking and having relationships with various shady characters. Your father-in-law and mother-in-law went to court and received custody of the children. Your mother sees them quite often, almost regularly. Linda, not that often. Last week, she ended up in a rehabilitation clinic. She's in terrible shape. Your father-in-law and mother-in-law are already exhausted from taking care of the kids and trying to keep their slutty daughter afloat. The fact that she's in rehab is a plus for them, but they're still stretched thin. Your mother-in-law's health is deteriorating, and your father-in-law's blood pressure is rising. The mood became quite gloomy, almost depressing. At this time, Joshua and Mai came and sat down next to each other. The man continued the conversation. Your family knows everything now. Mai and I don't know anything. Now it's up to you to decide what you want to share with us, son. The emphasis in his comment was undeniable. It is up to you. You've put this off long enough. There are other people besides you. Some of them are personally involved, some want to be involved. At that moment, Emma came and stood next to me. Not too close, but not too far from the main group. I wondered how much time I had left before my world came crashing down. But how could they not find me? I re-registered my truck, changed my driver's license, and I'm on the payroll here. Hell, I even paid my taxes last year. Mike blushed. Yes, well, I helped a little with that. When you changed your truck registration and driver's license, I pulled a couple of strings at the local DMV. You filled out all the forms correctly. Then the forms were accidentally lost. And there were also searches that came in. They appear to have been lost and not reviewed. He blushed and looked at his feet. My Angelina intervened again. LV, filed your taxes the first 2 years, so you owe him a little on taxes. Then last year, he let you do it on your own, so no one really cares. Not the government, not your in-laws, and of course not the police. Maybe your mom. She's a little worried too. They miss Dad. She's just angry at everyone and everything. She hesitated, becoming quiet. Except myself. She doesn't seem to have any responsibility for anything. Sorry, Jim, but that's it. Emma reached out and squeezed my shoulder. I looked into her beautiful gray eyes. I smiled at her. I shuddered and began to shake. Not for obvious reasons, but because I was a free man, and there were so many people who cared about me and pushed me to do it right. I've grown up. I think I need some space to think things through. Stop running, son. The time for that has passed, Joshua said decisively. I smiled. No, sir, you're right. No more running away. I looked at everyone. It's time to get our act together. I looked at Emma and pointed towards the river. Do you think someone could watch Linda while we walk around a bit? She said to the assembled group. Camilla stood up. "Don't worry, Emma. She'll be fine for a while." Emma grinned and said, "Thank you," to Camille and Mike. She took my hand and motioned for me to go forward. Angelina stood up, shook my hand, and hugged me. She then sat down and began to brief her parents on the events that had just been discussed. We followed the path leading north from the house, and after 15 to 20 moments, we were almost lost. The forest closed in so quickly. We walked a few more minutes and came across a large tree that had fallen over the riverbank. A very comfortable place and quite affordable to sit for a while. She drew me to the tree and, straightening her sunny dress, sat gracefully with her ankles crossed and looked at me. With a mischievous grin on her face, she patted the trunk next to her and simply said, "Sit down." It seemed like a good idea, so I sat down, studying the ground, my hands, the surrounding trees, and the water. Anything but the sweet woman sitting next to me. For her part, she closed her eyes, smiling and breathing deeply. The smile drove me crazy, as if she knew exactly what she would say, do, and how everything would turn out. I learned that this woman is much more insightful and focused than she seems. I was simply there, needed, but only because she wanted it. Not so bad if you think about it. But I need to fix everything. Finally, having collected my thoughts, I turned to her. She was still smiling, her eyes closed, as if she was meditating, waiting for me to begin. I spoke to her, hoping to gain some insight. "Emma, I think you need to know everything about me. I need to tell you my whole story." "Okay, speak up. I'm listening." She opened her eyes and turned to look at me. I sighed and took a deep breath. I told her everything. How my life was ruined by a heartless bitch, a decision I made right or wrong. For the last 3+ years of my life, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror without crying. How I didn't know what to do. I was lost like a ship on the high seas. I told everything Angie told us and some personal things. It even sounded pathetic to me. Perhaps I was finally starting to realize everything. Then how the encounter where I saved her and Linda affected me, and how her presence in my life has helped me since then. I was on edge when I finished and turned sideways towards her. My mind began to formulate a plan, but I was still unsure of its feasibility. She, on the other hand, looked at me with pleasure and giggled loudly. "So, if I'm not getting anything wrong, and I'm guessing pretty well, you want to make me an honest woman. Not that we have anything to talk about, because you were nothing less than honorable. I'm impressed with your determination. You really are. A man of exceptional character." She glowed and looked at me with undisguised admiration, and perhaps with a drop of passion, I think. I was a little shocked and a little embarrassed. I put aside everything that was running through my head and took her hands in mine. A little bold, perhaps, and I think I caught her off guard. But she held my gaze. She held her breath and waited. I swallowed the lump and began. "What I'm thinking of doing is asking Angelina to contact LW back in Illinois to see if I can get custody of my children. I don't know exactly where I stand in the eyes of the court, but I think that it can't be worse than hers, considering she lost her job, was arrested twice, and is in rehab. Then I want to move them here to where my life is now, with my mom, and she still has a few years left. After everything she's been through, I think I owe her. But first, I need to build a house big enough for my entire family to live in." I held her gaze until she realized it was up to her. She blinked and gasped. I think for the first time I was one step ahead of her. Yes, it didn't last long. "So let me get this straight. Do you have feelings for me?" I guess so." Yeah, I think so." "And you think that Linda and my Linda, can be part of your family?" Now it's my turn to smile. "You've got me. I'm pretty sure I love you, or at least I really like you, and I'm also pretty sure it could turn into love if we let it happen." With these words, I leaned over and kissed her. It wasn't a sexy or dirty kiss, just a kiss. But she didn't see it that way. She turned it into a proposal right there. No excuses. I am yours, and you are mine, period. Well, she took control again. "I know a very respected architect who, for a very nominal fee because his wife and I are close personal friends, We'll draw up the plans and file the permits once you decide where you want to build. In the meantime, we'll have Angelina contact L.B. to resolve the issue of children and obtain custody. You may also have some unresolved legal expenses, but we will discuss this later. So what do you say? She was now smiling like a Cheshire cat. What do you say to that? I rushed towards her, and she screamed with joy as we slid into the leaves behind the log. Laughter and giggles turned into smiles, hugs, and kisses. 45 minutes later, we returned to the party, still brushing off leaves and grass. Lots of smiles and giggles were wasted. We learned that Joshua and Mia now know about everything that has happened in my life. We told them everything we came up with and planned to do, and Joshua and Mia supported it. Angie was officially hired by my local lawyer, at a family discount of course, and was supposed to contact LW on Monday to begin the process. I sat and talked with Joshua about buying a lot to build a house on, with a little addition for my mom connected by a covered walkway, at 6 feet in height with its own ladder and ramp. The house itself would be 500 square feet and have 5 bedrooms. I planned for the future. I also made an offer to Joshua and Mia to rent out the place I was living in to Linda's parents. It was the least I could do if they wanted to live here with their grandchildren. I've always loved them, but I wasn't sure how they felt about me now or when I took their grandchildren. Let's see what happens. Emma and I sat down with the architect, and I told him what we wanted. Yes, they helped me. He suggested some ideas, showed a few on his laptop, and gave me an estimate. I was very appreciative of the price. It was much better than I thought. On Monday, I applied to the bank for a construction loan. Angie contacted LW and one of his associates to discuss what I had outlined. He believed that I would have to return to handle the case. Since I started working at the marina, I have not taken any vacations or days off, so I had almost 4 weeks of vacation that I could use. Joshua said that when I wanted to go get things done, I could use as much as I needed. My work will be waiting for me when I return. Family, was all he said. Meanwhile, Angie came up with a unique twist on my appeal case, and she and LV. We actively discussed it via Skype and email. Emma and I continued our communication, but because of the same one, I wanted to be sure. Really sure. Young Linda, on the other hand, intensified her attempts to win me over. Her attitude changed noticeably. She loved being with me and started holding my hand everywhere we went. She smiled almost constantly and laughed much more often when I was around. She even insisted on goodnight kisses and hugs. Her mother and I were delighted, and we also began to kiss and hug more often, but not yet intimately. I still felt overwhelmed, but Emma was patient and did her best. Linda then helped speed it up. When are you going to propose to my mom? Because I'm getting old and I really need a dad, and you fit the role, don't you think? This child is only 5 years old. My court case wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I really didn't do anything illegal. Reprehensible perhaps, but nothing the state could complain about, well, not too much. Her parents supported my plans, and to sweeten the deal, I told them about the offer to move in with us. Well, LV and Angie told them. They told them that I thought they wouldn't want to talk to me. Their lender really ruined everything on their end as they were heartbroken and couldn't wait to talk to me and apologize. As I said, everything was moving forward. 3 years. My side did well. I started a small company doing odd jobs and home renovations, and now manage 2 teams of 3 people after work and on weekends, and I felt much better. And my home became a source of pride. It was like building a barn. The piles were driven in less than a weekend, and the floors, ramp, and stairs were erected 4 weeks later. The rest went quickly, and within 2 months the structure with its tin roof was ready. I moved in, and Emma, Linda, May, Angelina, and Camilla got to work decorating with a lot of help from Sally. I received notice of a court date in family court. Linda came out of rehab and struggled with everything. LV began the process of selling the house before it was put up for auction. So I packed my truck, kissed my best girl goodbye, hugged the rest of my favorite women, and headed to Cicero. Angie said she would fly out there soon to be there for the trial. It was strange to return home after almost 4 years of absence. My neighborhood didn't change much, but my house looked a little depressed. The grass seemed to have not been cut for quite some time, and the paths were in great need of tidying up. One of the garage doors was dented, the other was painted, and at least one of the windows on the first floor was broken and covered with plywood. But I just drove by slowly on my way to my mom's apartment. It was more interesting for me to see her and apologize for the worries caused. There was no need to worry. Mom met me at the door as I carried my bag to the threshold. She hugged me, kissing my cheek, neck, arms, and any exposed skin she could find. So I guess I was mostly forgiven. But her profuse tears made me feel bad, and I apologized anyway. Her smile made everything better, and she pulled me inside, took my things to the guest room, and then returned with coffee. She said that LV will arrive in a while, and we can all talk. Now she just wanted to look at me and hug me. 2 hours later, LV came with Penny Wilson. They entered. LV hugged my mom and introduced me to Penny. Then we got down to business. It was Wednesday. Angie was due to arrive on Friday, and the trial would begin the following Monday. LV described what he thought our chances would be, saying that the judge we received was strict, but fair, did not tolerate betrayal and infidelity, but also had a bad attitude towards fathers who run away from the family. Luck at roulette. He told me a little about Linda's lawyer and what their legal tactics would likely be. No ability to pick up children, no child support, no petition for spousal support. He had to discuss our strategy with Angie, but he was confident that we were in a winning position. I felt like they weren't telling me something, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what. Friday arrived, and I drove to O'Hare Airport, about a 40-minute drive, to meet this young lady who I had come to consider a little sister. I was greeted with an outstretched left hand and a gorgeous smile. I looked at her seriously and said, "You said yes?" She hit me and laughed. I smiled, thinking that these were the things I had missed during the last 4 years of my journey. Angelina brought me up to date last week and told me that Robert Taylor had been completely supportive of everything about my case. He sympathized with me very much. I really liked him. We arrived at my mom's house, and I took her inside and introduced her to my mom. She was accepted, perhaps even better than I was. Imagine. The next day we went to LV's office and went up to the 5th floor to a large conference room. We met with LV and Penny, and after coffee they got down to business. They laid out everything we discussed, and then some, as Angelina brought everyone up to speed on some of the things she had found in her research. Everyone was determined, probably for my benefit, but I had a suspicion that I wasn't given the full package. But they assured me that this was not the case and everything was fine. Maybe I was just nervous. Angelina summed it up by saying that I was in pretty good shape. Monday was supposed to be the beginning of the end, and everything was supposed to work out well. I felt like I was being deceived, but I couldn't understand why. I smiled and said thank you. They were right. It was not in my hands, but in theirs. My life was finally going to get better, I hoped. I prayed quietly and promised myself to go to church tomorrow. We finished and headed home. Mom cooked dinner, but I can't tell you what we ate. After a quick dinner, I excused myself, took a shower, and went to bed. 9:00 p.m. I couldn't sleep. I twisted and turned, whispered every prayer I remembered from my youth, and came up with a few more. St. Michael and the Blessed Virgin received a full report, and I did not bother father or son much, as I thought they would not appreciate my whining. I must have fallen asleep because the sun came through the window at 6:30 a.m. I woke up, went to the toilet, brushed my teeth and shaved, then went to get coffee. After that I was in time for morning mass at 8:00. I stood back and prayed. I did not take communion or even get up during the service. I just kept my head down and prayed. At the end of the mass, a man approached me and informed me that the 10:00 mass would begin soon if I wanted to stay. I shuddered and stood up, thanked the old man, and left amidst a few strange looks. I drove along the lake shore in the freezing wind until 6:00 p.m. Then I went home. I arrived to a very worried mother who was worried about my absence. I assured her that I was fine and just needed some time alone. In fact, I felt better, like I had found peace. I ate a bologna sandwich like I did when I was a kid, drank a Coke, kissed my mom goodnight, and went to bed. I smiled at Angie as I walked into the bedroom, no more than a closet, and said, "Thank you to the Almighty." I think I was as prepared as possible. Monday arrived clear and fresh. It was cool, but early in the morning. The trial was to begin at 9 o'clock sharp. I arrived at 8:40. I walked into the county courthouse, looking for room 319. I found it, and LW, Angie, and Penny were there, just about to enter the courtroom. We said hello and exchanged pleasantries. Then I saw her. Linda. She walked out of the elevator with two lawyers, and oh my God, Dee and Jane were walking with her. She didn't notice me at first, only the others in my group, and headed towards the courtroom doors. But when she stopped and a man opened the door, Dee sighed and pushed her open. They stopped, exchanged words, and she turned, looking straight at me. That face I had loved for 12 years, but now, she looked terrible. Gaunt, with wrinkles, uneven complexion, slightly chubby face. Makeup didn't help her. The years have not been kind to her. Knowing that I had spent the last 4 years working outside and eating healthy, I felt in pretty good shape, so I felt a little smug. She took a step towards me, but two friends and her male companions restrained her and escorted her into the courtroom. Angie came closer to me. "She looks bad, Jim." "Yes," I answered. "It's a pity, huh?" It was quite cruel and took Angie by surprise, but she eventually understood. We waited a few more minutes and were just about to enter when the elevator doors opened again, and there they were, my mother and Linda's parents. Shock, certainly. They walked up to us and my mom hugged me, followed by Linda's mom, and then her dad extended his hand to me. Okay, the stunned one pushed out the shock and took over. I stuttered and faltered, then said, "Linda just came in." Her mom made my day. "That's good, but we're here for you." Her father confirmed this. "She had her chance, son. Now it's your turn. Just be polite." I couldn't help myself and gave him a bear hug. "Thank you, Dad." We turned and entered the courtroom. We walked to the plaintiff's table and sat down. Linda's mom and parents were sitting on the bench behind me. There were 3 or 4 other people in the room, 2 of whom looked like reporters or something. Young, but almost bored. Linda's entourage sat at her table and exchanged glances with us and her parents. At 5 minutes after 9, the bailiff stood up and announced, just as the door to the back of the courtroom opened. "Here, here, all rise in support of the Honorable Thomas Kincaid, Family Court Judge. The court is now in session. Case 213, James R. Carlisle v. Linda Kramer for the custody of 2 minor children, Emma Louise Carlisle, 12 years old, and Thomas James Carlisle, 9 years old. Child and spousal support are also in question. Please sit down." The judge reached the podium and sat down, took the gavel, and knocked once. "Thank you, bailiff. The court will make a decision. Are interested parties present?" Linda Kramer, defendant, Your Honor. I'm John Schultz, representing Miss Kramer. Louis W. Stearns, for plaintiff James Carlisle, Your Honor. Okay, this seems to be a pretty simple case. Kramer, your ex-husband is suing for custody of your 2 minor children and the ability to move them out of state. This is true. Rising, she addressed the judge. "Yes, Your Honor. He thinks I'm an unfit mother and will take my children away from me." "It's clear. You 2 are divorced, right?" "Yes, Your Honor." "May I ask why you got divorced?" At that moment, I almost jumped out of my seat, but LV grabbed my hand, threw it away, and muttered, "Not yet." He sat up straight, tapped his pen on the notepad, and listened. Linda sobbed. "We spent the night and weekend with our friends. It was the end of February, and we were celebrating the end of a very bad month. We were at Morrison's, dancing, and Jim and I had an argument, and he..." LV jumped out of his seat like a cannon shot. "Object, Your Honor," he shouted. Took the judge by surprise. The judge turned and looked at LV and asked, "On what basis?" "Miss Kramer is lying." At this point, Mr. Brushed Schultz stood up and said, "Your Honor, there is no need to attack my client's reputation. This has no bearing on the question." The judge thought for a moment. "Looks like there's more to this than meets the eye. The objection has been accepted, but I'm not sure what this can achieve. Kramer hasn't been sworn in yet, so let's see what's going on here." The two lawyers sat down as the judge motioned for them to return to their seats. He looked at Linda again. "Now, Miss Kramer, suppose you tell us what really happened." Linda turned pale, shivered, and looked around pleadingly. She was in a panic. I can't. I won't. It's not what you think." Her lawyer stood up again. "Your Honor, there is no basis to raise the issue of sexual impropriety. They are not relevant to this proceeding." If LV could smile wider, his face would split in half. Angelina even grinned. The judge raised his eyebrows. "Sexual misconduct?" Yes, Your Honor." "Miss Kramer, could you explain?" Linda shrank even more. She could not raise her eyes and could not utter a word. The judge thought for a moment. "Do you think you can honestly tell us what happened that night, Miss Kramer? You are not under oath, but we can swear you if necessary." "I can't. I won't. You can't force me." Now the judge was puzzled. He turned to LW. "Can Mr. Carlyle tell us what happened that night, Mr. Stearns?" LV turned and looked at me. I almost jumped up, ready to explode. "Swear on me, Your Honor. I will tell you what happened." "I object, Your Honor," Schultz shouted. He felt that the situation was escalating. There is no reason to listen to a biased, one-sided account of what happened that night. Objection overruled, lawyer. Bailiff. The bailiff took the Bible and approached the plaintiff's table. "Put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give before this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "I swear." He smiled at me and said, "Give me your name and address for recording." "James Carlyle, Hideaway Marina, Golden Beach, Maryland." "Thank you, sir." He turned and returned to his small table. The judge looked from me to Linda. "So, Mr. Carlyle, what can you tell us about this night?" I looked at the judge. I told him exactly what happened, from the moment we left our house to the moment Linda went to the ladies' room. I didn't miss anything. I then turned to look at my ex-wife, who was uncomfortable listening to this story. Holding her gaze, I continued. "She left me. She didn't say anything, didn't explain what she was going to do. She left and didn't come back. She left for the night with another man, Marc Lavaliere. No discussion, ultimatums, permission, argument, or explanation. She just left, so I went home and left her, just like she did to me. I'm not proud of what I did, but it seemed like I had no choice, just like she did." I hesitated. At least I left her a note. The silence in the courtroom was broken only by Linda's sobs at the table. Then she exploded. "You left me. You abandoned me and our 2 children, you scoundrel." "Just like you did, Linda," I answered her sharply. The judge managed to hit the gavel twice. "I demand order, or I will be forced to apply preventive measures to both." Her lawyer was furious. He did not want this to be discussed, especially not by me or at the request of the judge. The judge sat back and thought about both of us. Then he leaned forward. "Miss Kramer, is Mr. Carlyle's story true? Is everything he said true? Answer honestly, Miss Kramer. A lot depends on your answer." Linda was devastated. Her whole life, her fantastic night of wonderful sex, her imaginary fairy tale of paradise, crumbled into the cold light of day. She shrank and fell into a chair. "Miss Kramer, I'm waiting." She sighed heavily. Looking up and finding the judge's stern gaze, she cried, "Yes, sir, everything he said is true. I ruined everything." The judge blinked and turned to me. Well, Mr. Carlyle, I completely sympathize with your situation and the amount of stress you must have been under. But that doesn't change the fact that you left your family for almost 4 years. That's not good, sir. I was seething with indignation and was probably ready to go to jail when Angie stood up, grabbed my arm, pulled me to her seat, and glared at me. She then addressed the judge. If I may, Your Honor, I would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Carlyle. A new figure appeared on the scene. Who are you? Asked the judge. Maya Angelina Lowell, Your Honor. I am Mr. Bissy Carlyle's lawyer from Maryland. I think you need to meet some people. At this point, Mr. Joshua Lowell leaned forward. Your Honor, if I may? You're welcome, Mr. Lowell. He straightened up even more, if that was possible, and looked me straight in the eye. Your Honor, when we first met James Carlyle, he was a broken man. He had a weary look on his face and seemed defeated, but he didn't seem to give up yet. He was looking for a place to stay. He took an interest in one of the cabins on our plot at the marina. I decided to take a chance because I like to think that I have a good instinct for people, and I was not mistaken. He has changed. He is not finished yet, but he is becoming better. Joseph entered the conversation. I didn't know Jim as long or as well as the rest of my family, but I can tell you I agree with everything my dad said. I think Jim is a decent guy, too. Now Joshua Jr. has entered. Your Honor, I have to agree with my younger brother. I haven't had much interaction with Mr. Carlyle, but from what I've seen, I completely agree with their assessment. He hesitated. Your Honor, Jim has no military experience. I took the liberty of checking out your career. Major in the Army Legal Service before you retired and ran for judge. Sir, I think Jim would make a pretty decent infantryman or Marine. I'm just saying. He sat up, if possible, even straighter. Now it was Mike's turn. Your Honor, my wife and I have known Jim for about 4 years. I want you to know that we are in complete agreement. I would trust the safety of my wife and children to James Carlyle any minute. My children call him Uncle Jim, don't tell him, but they consider him a cool uncle. Jim also became something of a hero in the Golden Beach area. He saved a young woman and her daughter during an attempted robbery carjacking, and at great personal risk, he stopped an armed assailant and subdued him, saving the 2 young ones. I'll give you. He looked at Camille, and she nodded at him, then looked at the judge and nodded. Sally was the last one to speak up. Jim Carlyle walked into my restaurant a tired, beaten, broken young man, Your Honor. I knew right away that he needed help. At the time, I didn't know how hurt he was. Her stern gaze moved to the tearful Linda. Now I know. I also know that he is a wonderful man who has made great strides to rebuild himself. I am proud to consider him a surrogate grandson. She turned slightly to look at Jim's mom. Mrs., you have done an excellent job raising this young man. Wow, maybe I could run for president or something. I didn't know I was that good or that popular. But that is not all. Your Honor, Angie continued as the doors opened again. There is one more person who would like to speak. This is where the other shoe dropped. I turned around, and there she was. Emma Lindell stepped to the railing behind me as I stood up and walked over to her. But I stopped and stood there while she smiled, and then with that smug grin and confident air she possessed, I looked at the judge and spoke. Your Honor, if I may I speak in this man's defense? Linda turned pale, and the color drained from her face as she looked at Emma with obvious hostility. Yes, please. Who are you? Mrs. Emma Lindell. I am the woman Jim saved from muggers in Golden Beach, Maryland. Me and my daughter, Linda. The courtroom was a little noisy. The judge struck his gavel once for order, and silence reigned. Please continue, Mrs. Lindell. Your Honor, I have known James Carlyle, directly and indirectly, for about 1.5 years. I have nothing but the highest respect for him. He is a wonderful, honorable man. The fact that her gaze slid towards Miss Kramer with barely noticeable hostility was not missed by anyone. I've become very close to him since he came to the rescue, but nothing inappropriate. I admit I wanted more, but until recent months he still thought he was married, although his wife seemed to think otherwise. Linda raged, low, rude comments to her lawyer threatening to drown out other dialogue in the courtroom. The judge struck the gavel once for silence and warned Mr. Schultz to calm down his client's antics. Linda calmed down and sat down, muttering to herself. Emma continued. I was willing to wait as long as it took for James to recover. This action regarding his children is a big step forward in his healing process. I hope this works out in his favor. He is a good man. I can only hope that the rest of his return to this world will be just as successful. As I said, I will wait for him. Silence. Then, I love him, Your Honor. Purrs. The judge raised his eyebrows, and the sound stopped. The judge cleared his throat. Thank you, Mrs. Lindell. The court appreciates your testimony and your candor, and we will. Linda's scream of no cut through the air as she stood up and ran towards the exit. The judge struck his gavel, ordering the bailiff to detain the defendant. But it was too late. She's already gone. Her lawyer jumped up and asked for a break or something like that, which would allow him to talk to his client. The judge sighed and announced a 2-hour break for lunch, after which we would resume the hearing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Everyone stands up, the bailiff announced. The judge stood up, shaking his head, and left. I turned to Emma. So you love me. I think it's mutual. She was trembling, her eyes bulging. What? She muttered. Come on, I know you're smarter than that. You probably already know that I love you too. In an instant, her expression changed into a beautiful smile. Blushing, she replied, Well, now I'm sure. I took her hands in mine and kissed her lightly on the lips. We turned around and my friends and family were smiling, laughing and blushing at our display of affection. We headed off to a steakhouse a few blocks away and started eating lunch. My lawyers were in high spirits, especially Angie, who was very pleased with her performance in bringing my support group. LV said that if she ever got tired of being in Maryland, she should contact him. He was confident that he could find a place for her in his law firm. At approximately 1:45, we returned to court to be greeted by the chaotic defense team. It turns out their client has disappeared. Linda was nowhere to be found. The judge issued a warrant for her arrest, but the defense legal team brought forward signed, certified documents in which she agreed with my claim and waived all parental rights. Stunned. That was all I had when LW and Angie came over and told me what they would be presenting. I thought for a moment and then asked about the legal implications. My lawyers looked at each other and then LV said, None, son. You won. She gave you everything you wanted. You're already divorced. That's all the rest. Angie encouraged me by placing her hand on my shoulder. It's over, Jim. Accept it and go. You don't even have to run. She didn't ask for anything. Like I said, stunned. It's all over. I won. But at what cost? I still had to pick up my kids from school. They were unaware of the current situation, but that would soon change. It appears that 2 reporter types, one from the local Cicero newspaper and the other from the Chicago Sun-Times, were unable to speak with my ex-wife because of her disappearance. So now I have become an object of interest. But LV intercepted them and said that we would make a statement tomorrow, after reviewing all relevant documents. It'll take them a day or two, and hopefully the dog will bite the man and we won't be news anymore, he laughed. We went to school to pick up the kids, and I came face to face with my kids. Emma was now 12 years old, and Tommy was 9. They ran out of the school, maintaining a semblance of order until they saw their grandparents. It was unusual. They rushed towards them, then stopped. They saw me standing there with a woman they didn't recognize. They froze for a moment, then exploded. Daddy, Daddy, they shouted. Then they rushed towards me and started jumping around me. Hugs and kisses, drool everywhere. We missed you. Where were you? Why didn't you call? What happened? Why was Mom so angry? Where is Mom? No one seemed to tell the children. HM. How interesting this is. I hugged them while Emma Lindell stood at a distance, trying not to interfere. I stood up and pointed at her. She approached slowly. "Kids, this is Mrs. Lindell. She's a good friend of mine. What do you say we go home with my grandparents and have lunch and meet some of my other good friends and have a good time?" They looked at each other, then said, "Okay," and grabbed their backpacks, and we headed to the grandparents' car because there were child seats there. We went to my grandparents' house, and the kids spilled out into the backyard where the party was going on. Now comes the difficult moment. After everyone had eaten and the children were told that they would miss school tomorrow, we retired to the yard. It's time for serious conversations. 3 grandparents were with me, LV, and Angie, and at my insistence, Emma Lindell. I explained to the children that their mother had left. I didn't know where, and we would try to find her. But she left us all. They were a little angry, but it seemed like it was common for her to disappear from time to time. One of the reasons her parents filed for custody when Linda started going crazy. In fact, they lived a full life with their parents, with all their belongings and clothes. My permanent place of residence was my grandparents' house, and my mother spent a lot of time there. So here it is, guys. I went to court for custody of you. Your grandparents support it. I won the case, and your mom agreed to it. You have a decision to make. You can move and live with me or stay here with your grandparents. Your choice. I don't want to interfere in your life anymore. I will answer any questions you have as soon as I think you are ready to understand the answers. But there are some things you may not understand yet. My daughter spoke first. She cheated on you, didn't she, Dad? There were different men every few weeks, for a long time. They were terrible. That's gross, Dad, Tommy interjected. That Mark was the worst. It wasn't hard for me not to sympathize with my ex-wife. Silence hung in the air as Emma Lindell sat much closer to me, squeezing my hand. Tommy intervened. "Is she your friend?" I blushed and looked at the floor. "Well, yes." Emma stumbled back a little and hit me. Little Emma laughed and leaned towards Tommy. "Oh yeah, she's definitely his friend." Then the conversation took a different turn. "You know, my name is Emma too," she said, looking at my friend. "Emmeline," answered Big Emma. "But my friends call me Emma. I like it." Little Emma stared at Big Emma. "My real name is Emily, but I like Emma too. That's what all my friends call me." No problem here, I thought. My son, on the other hand, watched it all carefully. He was 9 years old, but he had my mind. He turned to me. "I think she's suitable, Dad." He also looked at me piercingly. "What do you think?" I stared at him. It was going better than my wildest dreams could have hoped. "I think so too, son." So we discussed a lot of things over the next 2 days. I pitched my ideas to my father-in-law and mother-in-law and my mother. I explained about the house I built, the offer for them to sell their house, and for my mother to sell her house and move to Maryland. The children were ready to move, especially when they learned that their grandparents would be moving too. Yes, and older people were also in favor, believing that they needed a change of scenery. We organized everything since Linda disappeared. LV also helped my mother with the sale of her house. She went through the house, had a big garage sale, donated a ton of stuff to charity, and packed everything else to ship. My father-in-law and mother-in-law put their house up for sale and did the same with most of their belongings. They then rented a 40-foot truck and began packing it up. The children returned to school, and we received all the necessary forms and paperwork to move their lives to Maryland. I stayed to help. We drove back. The kids and my father-in-law were in their car, and my mom and I were in their loaded truck. 3 motel rooms for one night, and we were back in Golden Beach. Camilla had arranged for some good psychologist therapists at the school to talk to the children, but they seemed to be doing a good job so far. There was still no news about Linda. We arrived, and I showed the children and parents our new house. My father-in-law's place was only a 5-minute walk away, so after my mom and kids toured the house and picked out bedrooms, we went to show off their new place. We were met by Mai and Camilla, who gave us a tour and handed us the keys. They really liked it. While everyone was getting acquainted, I walked back to my house, and there was Emma and Linda talking on the porch with the rest of my family. I walked up the steps and immediately met my daughter. Her withering gaze stopped me in my tracks. So, will I have another sister besides the new mom? Hey, yeah, I guess. Didn't I mention that? She stared at me, then suddenly laughed and cried. Thank you, Dad. She rushed towards me and gave me a bear hug. Tommy came up and said, now he understood why there were so many bedrooms. But he didn't look me straight in the eyes. We need to keep an eye on this boy. My guys arrived, and within a couple of hours, we unloaded my father-in-law's and mother-in-law's things. Everything was ready, just unpacking. The same thing happened with my mother's things, which arrived a few days ago in a small storage container. I thanked everyone, treated them to dinner at Sally's, and checked my bank account. I needed to get back to work. Life resumed, fueled by two young people in the same house, getting used to new surroundings and places. Linda quickly hit it off, and my family began to react to progesterone. Tommy and I became closer because it became an us versus them competition. Good-natured, but if you have kids, you understand. That has changed. They have done well in school and will start the next school year at the same level. Emma and I got married in mid-August in a small ceremony and honeymooned in New Orleans. I was still building my business back, but we saw almost nothing outside the hotel room and restaurant, so the relatively warm weather didn't play a big role or affect anything. Linda, don't know. So I rebuilt my shattered existence with the help of really good friends, wonderful relatives new and old, and a wonderful, faithful, loving new wife. I'm happy. Did I make the right choice then, many years ago? Maybe. I think I made perhaps the only possible choice. I'm lucky. That's all I can say for sure. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.